we can begin the question and answer portion of this panel. Again, the panel is We Are Sad and We Have Hope. Our first presentation was from Chaplain Samsiah Abdul-Majid, In a State of Hope, My Son Died Alone, and she was joined by Sister Sandra. Thank you for being here and sharing your story. Our second presenter is Dr. Suleiman Sertkaya, and his talk was entitled 2020, the Year of Sorrow, Lessons and Coping Strategies from the Most Difficult Year of the Prophet's Life. And finally, our last speaker, last but not least, is our dear brother, Dr. Bilal Ansari, who talked about this idea of a lived theology. Nobody knows the troubles I've seen. So welcome all of you back, and so we can have this, this conversation. My first question, before we get to sort of the individual questions that are being posed to each of you, my first question is one that is perhaps more personal. And it is to find out from you, how did the subject or the content of your talk, right, impact you personally, right? There are ways that we are academics, we're scholars, but we're also human beings that very much care for the people that we serve. And so I'm curious to learn from you how what you were exploring, and for you, Sister Sandra, just being able to have this conversation about your dear son. How did that impact you? What came up for you? What did you learn in this process of even developing this topic? So if we can start with you, Sister Sandra, about your contribution and how did it impact you personally to join this conversation?
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Rashad, for including the story of Jamal this evening. It made me more complete.
MashaAllah.
In the telling of the story, sometimes it was quite painful. Sometimes I was at a loss for really, well, how do I feel, or how did I feel? You know, as a mother, when you lose a child, you know, it's hard. When you lose also a child in this manner alone, it was something that was we're still trying to understand. I think what came out though was that because, you know, as Muslims, you know, we have this resilience. I think we have a certain kind of resilience, a certain kind of acceptance, a certain hope for that Allah has a plan and it's part of the plan. So I think this acceptance really helps both to be able to go through the grieving process, but also to get into the healing process. And Samsiah, as a chaplain, was very, very instrumental in holding certainly my hand and some of my family in going through this journey, recognizing grief, recognizing sorrow, recognizing loss, but also recognizing hope and also acceptance.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. I think that certainly resonates with our viewers and everyone who's listening, that there's this bittersweet kind of understanding that is difficult, but we also trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to provide that hope and that grounding. Chaplain Samsiah, I want to ask you the same question, that how did this impact you personally, right? As a human being, witness to both this pain, but also this hope that started to emerge. Chaplain Samsiah, you're still muted.
Thank you. I think Chaplain Sandra doesn't realize how much of a help she is to her chaplain. How much strength I gain from her grace, and from the strength that she had within her. And I think there are times when I am the one who is the one who cried. and she's the one who is providing the strength. And I think when we talk to a lot of chaplains that deal with this kind of emotions, and where you go into a sacred space where you are honored to be the companion for the person, we always feel that there is this sacred presence that enriches both of us. And then there is a lot of leaning one on the other and vice versa. So it's so much a journey of pain and despair, but it's also a journey of hope. And in the process, I think the Al-Fatiha, that is such a common surah that we recite, becomes such an old friend that we seek comforts, that we anchor in. And the verse that says that, it's only you that we believe in, and you that we gain help or seek help, it has a different sense and a different modulation in this time. And it really is so simple. It's something that we recite every day, but the essence of it changes in this situation. Yeah. So it's an old friend that we go to. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for sharing, and sharing in such a vulnerable way. I think there's an intimacy, and there is a bond that is formed between the chaplain and the person that they're serving, and that there's a reciprocal relationship that develops in a very unique and special way that really only emerges, right, in the context of this particular relationship. So thank you for sharing a bit more about how that impacted you. I also want to turn this question over to Dr. Suleiman. You offered us these really great coping strategies from the life of the Prophet during this year of sorrow. And so as you do this sort of formal academic study of what that year meant and how it not only impacted the Prophet, but the entire sort of growing community, I wondered, how did that impact you personally? What sort of reflections came to you as you explored this topic?
Thank you, Dr. Rashad, for this question. I think that's a constant question I'm asking to myself when I talk about the Prophet. It's my kind of academic job. I'm delivering lectures on Sirah. It's my day-to-day job. I'm talking to community, and always we are referring to the life of the Prophet. And constantly I ask myself, how I really kind of emulate these teachings and kind of internalize what I'm telling to people in my day-to-day life. So am I really showing that optimism and hope to everybody? I constantly ask this question. Am I that kind to the people around me? That Prophet was an embodiment of kindness, and am I a gift to my people around me? Like Prophet is a gift to us even, 14 centuries later. So am I really doing my job properly? That really, am I representing a beautiful life and teachings and akhlaq of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? So it really gives us a strength at one hand to understand and to talk about it. It also gives us it's like a interrogation for myself to whenever I am going to talk about something, it becomes a really heavy task for me because I need to take care of what I'm saying. And I strongly believe that if I'm not practicing what I'm saying, it has no value in the side of the audience. So that's, as I said, it's a constant questioning for myself.
Thank you also for your honesty and knowing that the work that you pursue professionally, you kind of have to align with your own sort of personal thoughts and behaviors, and that is no easy task. so thank you for sharing your process, and also this question for you, Dr. Bilal Ansari. There's so much here that I want to hopefully unpack with all of you, but that was really a powerful testimony, and beginning with us being able to hear the song that sort of inspired the title of your talk. This was also a very personal story. So I wonder how you were able to sort of construct the outline of this talk as you were also finding ways to process all of the ways that it impacted you.
Yes. So thank you. Um, I have to be honest. I felt immediately when I heard the news, I was angry. Um, um, that was my immediate like emotion. Then there was sadness. Um, and the the care for myself came when talking to his daughter. It was as if she was giving me sermons that I had, given him when we were in like prison. It was as if she remembered these sermons and she was reminding me of things that he had told her, and I needed it. So it was like it was like a recycling. And this is right after George Floyd. So I'm grieving in many ways. And so at the time, all these Muslim groups were writing their speeches about what they're going to be doing, for the blacks and center and black. And so I turned to the foreign like Muslims. So the black man died. He just got out of the prison. He was not connected to any one of these masjids, but he was a Muslim who can help. And they raised the money within a few hours, and they helped me, to fulfill these rights. And that was a rejuvenation. That was that was an affirmation, and just seeing his beautiful smile, as we, it just brought all the joys, memories, and being able to care for his like daughter. And so that song, that title came from the like Lion King, when like Zazu was trapped, by that mean like lion, like Zar, and he was in the little prison of the little bones. He was like, nobody knows the troubles, and I was like, what? Where is it? And my white wife was like, that's a Negro like spiritual hymn. My white wife was like, you never heard that spiritual? And I searched it. I started listening to that spiritual, and it just did my spirit well, and it all came together. And so I thank my white wife, and I thank you, like Lion King, and because it helped to bring me to a good place spiritually.
MashaAllah. I think one of the sort of the common threads that I heard from all of you is this duality between really understanding the pain and the suffering, but also looking for the hope and the optimism, the strength for the lesson in what all of this is teaching you. So I want to turn once again to Sister Sandra and Chaplain Samsiah, because there was one of your last slides that talked about this hope framework. And I was hoping that we could carve out just, I know we're have 10 minutes left to our Q&A, but I thought that was such a fundamental part of the lesson that was sort of learned from this experience around hope. And I was, really trying to write down things quickly. So I saw hope, heal with compassion. And I think the other was openness. So I wondered if you could just spend a couple minutes telling us what that hope framework is, and explaining kind of just very briefly the components of that.
Maybe Samsiah, you want to go first?
Here you go. Sorry, I was looking for my unmute button. When we were trying to pin on what are the things that we could find useful for us as a community, and one of the things that we realize is that compassion is really something that is so important in our faith tradition, and it is something that is also very important when it comes to healthcare. we talk about patient care, and when there is no compassion, there cannot be patient care. And compassion, actually, studies have shown that it affects the family's healing. It affects the number of days that patients stay in hospitals. So it affects the bottom line. And so if we talk about compassion and compassionate care, it cannot be absent from patient-centered care. So to me, it's a practical and a very a spiritual consideration that leads to the practical and has impact on the practical. And then I think one of the things that we talk about is mentoring of physicians and all the healthcare workers, because we know that compassion or empathy is taught, difficult communication is taught in graduate school, where people are doing healthcare, chaplains, healthcare or medical or nursing, social work. But this is something that you have to practice. It has to be part and parcel of your being. It is not something that you check off. Yes, I did compassion. No, you have to be always be involved in it, and it's part of yourself, so that when you are in a situation that is very difficult, that grace of compassion will come out automatically as part of your care. It's not an addition. Sorry, Sandra, go ahead.
I also wanted just to echo what you're saying, and perhaps the inspiration for the word hope came from my son, Jamal. I mean, his last words, as he's texting me, he can't breathe. He's got 84 oxygen saturation, and he's going into an ambulance, and somehow he's texting, still conscious. And the last words were, "I hope it works itself." So for me, if that was the last, so he's offering me hope. And even though he passed, I need to continue that hope.
Thank you. Kind of similar, but slightly different question for you, Dr. Suleiman. Someone asked, when Allah takes away something, what would you say to help us embrace when Allah takes away something that is dear to you, He will give you something better, especially for those who have lost their loved ones? How and where can we see that better? And I wonder if there's a particular aspect of the coping strategies that you offered speaks to this, that we often hear sort of these words uttered to us in the midst of grief and sorrow and pain. But it's hard to really think about how to embrace that in that moment. So I wonder your thoughts about that.
Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you. I guess there are two sides of this question. One is, the thing that is taken away from us, especially when it is the loved ones. So this separation causes a lot of pain. But the fact that that this is what we learn from our tradition, that this is just changing a room and I will be reunited, right? It is not really total eternal separation. It is just, it's next door, which I will be hopefully going and reuniting, and there is no more separation. So it's an eternal happiness and reunion in a way. I think that's like in a very deep spiritual level. It really, it's a lot more that is giving us, because imagine your loved ones are in pain, and this is going to take longer. It really gives more pain to you. But that separation of, a temporary separation, which will be, relieving those pains from your loved ones, is actually, and believing in Allah's power to reunite you and bless you eternal happiness together. I think it's really replacing with something that is uncomparable. So that's one thing. Remember the statement of the Prophet to Khadija when she lost his son, because she was breastfeeding, right? as a mother, like I'm a father of 2 kids. One is at the moment 1.5 years old and breastfeeding. So I can really connect to that a lot. So she said, uh, he was breastfeeding. Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, angels in the paradise continuing with that. Khadija said, I wish I would know this before, so my pain would diminish. So when on my slides, when Fatima asked the Prophet, where is my mother? So Prophet said, in a pavilion made of diamonds and precious materials. So I think that really gives her a hope and really recovers her. It's a great healing.
Yeah.
So in a personal level, I think that deep understanding of our eschatological, theology, what's happening in the hereafter, what is really death, is this a total separation or not, it's replacing with something better, I suppose.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. We can all hope and pray that that's something better we will also receive from the Almighty. Our final question for this panel this evening is for you, Dr. Ansari. You posed the question, what is the dominant paradigms of spiritual care that would prepare a Muslim chaplain for the case of this brother, Jundula? And as the co-director of the Islamic chaplaincy program at Hartford Seminary, that is a question. I'm not sure if it was rhetorical, but I'm going to push you to give us sort of the most impressive answer you can give us to the question that you posed in the next minute. So I'm going to put you to the spot because I know you've thought about this. So what could prepare a Muslim chaplain for the intensity and for really the presence that's required for that kind of ministry and pastoral care?
Yeah. So thank you for this question. So I think, in short, when you're going through Islamic law and you're going through Islamic like theology, and you're going through Islamic like spirituality, and even when you're looking at the historical arc of the kind of the epistemology of our tradition, you need to look at it within three ways. You need to look at the theory behind what's being said. You need to look at the elements of practice, of of how do you enact what's being said, and then you need to look at the integration of how that is enacted within the sociological and the psychological like realities within the American like frame in which we live. That is the best education for a Muslim chaplain, and that I call Muslim pastoral like theology.
Okay, so you gave it to us in like a minute. So you have thought about this, which is, I think, a reason for those who are Muslim and going into the field of chaplaincy, and for honestly any individual to really have that deep understanding. And what I also hear you saying is a willingness to do that integration, which requires an understanding of context that goes beyond the intellectual. So we are right at 8:45. I want to thank all of you, Sister Sandra, Chaplain Samsiah, Dr. Ansari, Dr. Suleiman, and also our interpreters for keeping up with us. Forgive us if we were speaking too quickly, but thank you all for joining. This was an amazing, this almost feels like there needs to be a part two. This was a really amazing panel, and I thank you all for your thoughtfulness and for your openness and vulnerability in joining this conversation. Assalamu alaikum.